Congressman, nice to see both of you.
Good to be with you.
Nice to see a Democrat and Republican sitting down together. I know it happens lots of times, but we don't see it often on TV. Let me talk about the bill that you introduced today. Let me start with you first, Congressman Van Hollen. The line item veto. Explain what that is, and then I'll have you explain the bill.
Well, this is an important measure to try and increase accountability for Congress when it comes to spending. So the way it works is this. If Congress passes a big appropriations bill that has lots of stuff stuffed into it, the president can say, I don't really think we need to spend money on this item and this item and this item. And this will require Congress then to act on the recommendations of the president for cut that he wants to cut. So right now, a lot of people try and stuff, special provisions into these spending bills, and this will provide greater accountability, oversight, and scrutiny.
As it stands now, without the line item veto, if the president gets this big bill from Congress, which let's say has a whole bunch of fat in it, sort of even some silly projects, he either has to accept it or reject it, right?
Thing.
He can't just say, I'm not paying for that, we shouldn't do that. So this brings it back.
Take it or leave it.
Take
run
it or leave
the
it the way it
government
is
or
now.
not. Take it or leave it, the entire bill. And what happens is at the 11th hour, and both parties have done this, they stuff these provisions in at the 11th hour. The Rainforest Museum, remember that one? That came in at the 11th hour, and he has to take that along with all the rest of the things that are necessary and proper. This tool lets the president pull that piece of pork out, send it back to Congress, and then we have to vote up or down on it on its merits. We can't duck the vote. We can't amend it. And so what this will do will help embarrass pork out of these bills. It will help make members think twice about tucking these things in these spending bills at the last minute. So we think it's sort of a tool of embarrassment. And this isn't going to solve all our fiscal problems, but it's going to help us attack the culture of wasteful Washington spending that is seeped into the process by both political parties. We banned earmarks here in Congress this year, but we think this takes it a step further of going after just a lot of the waste that gets tucked into these bills at the last minute.
All right. Now, this is, as many people remember, Congressman Van Hollen, that there was a line item veto case. That we had a statute before that was passed, and it went to the Supreme Court, and it was struck down as unconstitutional. How is this bill different from that earlier run where it was declared unconstitutional, that method?
Well, it's different for this reason, and Paul and I both agree that the earlier Supreme Court decision was correct, because what happened there was Congress would send the president a spending bill, and the Congress has the power of the purse. Under the old line item veto provisions, the president could say, okay, I don't want to spend money on this item, and I don't want to spend money on that item, without further action by Congress. What this does is the president has to pull out the items that he or she doesn't want to spend money on, but then Congress has to act.
So it goes back to Congress. That's the big difference.
What's called expedited procedure, meaning that has to come up for a vote. As Paul said, it's an up or down vote on this item of spending that the executive has now said we don't need. The federal government should not be spending money on this thing. So it's going to mean a lot of members are going to think twice up front before they ask for a spending item that they don't think they can defend under the full light of day.
Okay, this seems like a really good idea. So let me go to you, since your House runs the House of Representatives right now. Is that this parallels a bill in the Senate that was passed in last January, right?
Right. So
what took you so long? I mean, why? I mean, like, because the American people, they're in an awful big hurry to get things done. This seems like a wise way to look at spending. So why does it take you a year to catch up?
I passed this in 2005, last time we were in the majority, then it died in the Senate. We were seeking to pass this session, but we have partners in the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, who are in favor of this, so we think we have a very good chance of doing this. And the White House, I believe, does support this. So we think the planets have aligned themselves so we can get this done, because in the past, either the House passes it and it dies in the Senate, or the Senate passes it and it dies in the House, like was the case last session. We think this time we got it lined up.
But why does it take since January? They did theirs in January.
People like pork barrel spending. People like the idea, some members of Congress, of being able to tuck narrow spending provisions in these bills without having to justify them on their own merits. And that system, which is part of the corrosive culture of spending up here, propagated by both political parties, is one that we just can't afford anymore. And so we believe we've got the momentum on our side. We've been fighting for this kind of accountability for a long time, and we think the time has come for it, and that's why we're pushing it now.
What's going on up here? Why does it seem like American people think that things just aren't getting done? They see all the fighting. I mean, on the one hand, it's nice to see democracy. People get to argue their positions, but it has gotten to such a point where the nation really is in economic crisis, and we're just sort of like, we've gone from Simpson Bowles, we've gone to the deficit, the vote in August, then we got the super committee, and why can't things get done?
Well, Greta, obviously part of this is as a result of deep disagreements on some policy issues, but I would hope that we are able to come together and compromise on some issues. I think this measure, while we agree isn't going to solve the deficit problem, it's an important step. I mean, it's important substantively, it's important symbolically to take this kind of action. Again, I hope that we're able to work out some of the other pressing issues right now. I think we should extend the payroll tax holiday, given the fragile economy. I think we should extend unemployment compensation. And we'll have those debates, and maybe we'll find agreement on some of those issues. But for today, we're pleased that we're able to come together on this measure.
And I do see that, and it's like even off camera, what the viewers don't see is you guys like each other.
Yeah, so
other members, no, and I mean, I think the American people need to see that. But it's, you know, it's very frustrating for these things that are so important that so you can't sort of break through that, whatever that barrier is to get things done. Even though people have this sort of strong ideology, is that the American people are sitting there thinking like, you know, we're desperate, you know, do something.
This is the other reason why Chris and I are doing this. He and I are the top Republican and Democrats on the Budget Committee. We agree on this. So we wanted to show that we're not always at each other's throats every time, that there are things where we can work together, we can agree on and get things done. That's the other reason why we're doing this now of all times, where it'd be nice to see that every now and then, and that's why we're doing this.
We're going to get resistance here?
Yeah, we do.
We'll probably get resistance from folks on both sides of the aisle.
Both sides of the aisle. The people who like to write spending bills are typically the people who resist these kinds of reforms.
But is it only the people who have their pet projects that are going to object, or is there some overriding ideology? Is there any reason beyond sort of like, I want my thing in the bill? Is there any other objection to it?
The typical objection is the people who write these bills, the discretionary appropriation bills, like having the ultimate amount of discretion with how they write those bills. And we want to limit that discretion to having more sunshine, more accountability, and this kind of a tool which can embarrass the wasteful spending that gets put into these bills. And the folks that don't like it are typically those who want all total discretion, and we just think that that's been abused too much.
Right. And well, the old objection, of course, to the original line item veto was you're giving the executive branch and the president too much authority because the president gets to decide of all the items that Congress said that it wanted to invest and spend money on, which ones he or she would not. Why this is different is it comes back to Congress, but Congress can no longer duck this issue now. Congress has to vote on whether or not to keep these proposed spending items as part of a bill. So, again, there will be resistance, but I think in the end of the day we'll get this
Yeah, and it
passed.
keeps the prerogatives of Congress, keeps the power of the purse in the legislative branch, like the Constitution says.
So when will the vote be, do you think?
We're going to mark it up this year, probably have the vote next year. Meaning
that seems so long. That seems so far away in times of desperation.
We're coming in December. No, it's floor time, probably in February or January.
All right. Well, we'll be watching, and we'll come back and we'll get a list of the names of those who don't like it.
Hey, that's lightning speed.
That's actually pretty fast for around here. That's right. That's right.
Thank you both.